For as long as people have called this place home, they've been welcomed with clean air, clean water, and an abundance of nature. As time went on, people saw the need to balance how we build cities with how we protect farms and forests. That's why across Greater Portland, in 24 cities and 3 counties, there's one metro government that brings us all together to maintain that vital balance, to provide services across cities and counties, to create a better future together. Hello, we're Metro. We plan for housing, jobs, and safe transportation. We protect land, air, and water by managing garbage and recycling. We support arts and culture by overseeing local venues to keep the economy growing. And we connect people to nature across 17,000 acres of parks and trails and at the Oregon Zoo. Metro is all of us working together, connecting how we live today with how we plan for the future. Hello, we're Metro, and so are you.
Our Metro Council work session of November 14th, 2023. Connor, will you please call the roll for attendance?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Here.
Councilor Wong.
Present.
Councilor Lewis.
Present.
Councilor Nolan.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councilors Gonzalez and Simpson are both excused today, and President Peterson.
Here, thank you. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for in-person attendees?
I'm Mike Reese, and I'm the dive safety officer here at the Oregon Zoo, and safety is a big part of my job. Some of the things we consider here is diver safety. I'm out here at the Oregon Zoo, and you're at the Metro Regional Center. The council chamber is located on the 3rd floor of this building. In the event of fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room, go down the steps to the 2nd floor, and exit through the main entrance by the reception desk and gather in the courtyard outside the entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you.
All right, we have one agenda item for today. And it's WPES again. I'll ask Marta McGuire and staff to come on up while we get ready to talk about the bulky waste policy project. We have no fans of it in the room whatsoever. So excited. So here we are to talk about how to move forward with implementing a bulky waste policy, given the direction by council in December of 2020. Marta.
Good morning, President Peterson's councilors. Thank you so much for having Waste Prevention and Environmental Services again today. I did hear from John Blasher that you might get a punch card when you come to council enough times in a month that you get lunch with councilors.
Gold stars.
Just gold stars. Okay. Good morning again. My name is Marta McGuire, Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Director. I have here with me Sarah Kirby, Senior Planner in WPES, and Rosalind Green, Strategic Initiative Advisors. As President Peterson noted, we are here today to share the work on the bulky waste policy project and request guidance on additional information council would like when considering future bulky waste policy options. No formal action is requested from you at this time. As you may know, bulky waste is a garbage industry term that refers to unwanted household items that are generally too large to put in the garbage can. As you know, this has been a key topic of conversation as a part of the system facilities plan development. It was also identified as a critical service gap when we were developing the regional waste plan. Goal 10 in the regional waste plan seeks to provide regionally consistent services for garbage, recyclables, and other priority materials that meet the needs of all users. One of the key levers for implementing this policy guidance is the garbage and recycling collection service standards that Metro sets in its code. Outcomes of this project that we're going to touch on today will inform implementation of the service standards and are likely to have impacts to local government rates. You may recall New Zealand, as a part of the international panel, shared their experience as with bulky waste collection service provision as being a critical service, but also one that was complex to implement and expensive to provide. So if we go to the next slide, today we're just going to cover our current policy framework as it relates to bulky waste, the services that are currently available, and here around the bulky waste policy project that includes a multifamily bulky waste collection pilot that is currently underway. And so with that, I will turn it over to Sarah Kirby.
Thank you, Director McGuire, Council President Peterson, and Metro councilors. My name is Sarah Kirby. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a policy planner in WPEZ and the project manager for the Bulky Waste Policy Project. The project is a Metro and local government collaborative project, and we've been actively working with Clackamas and Washington counties and the cities of Beaverton, Gresham, and Portland. Next slide, please. To provide clarity about the material stream that we are talking about, a draft definition is being developed. The key points from the definition are on the slide, and the definition includes household items like mattresses, tables, patio furniture, appliances, cabinets, and toilets, items that do not fit in a 35-gallon roll cart. This definition provides important distinction from other waste types, namely construction and demolition wastes. With a few exceptions like the cabinets and toilets noted in the definition. This distinction is important because construction and remodeling waste may contain asbestos, which has special testing and handling protocols. An additional note on multifamily. For solid waste purposes, multifamily is 5 or more units on a single tax lot as defined by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and includes apartments, condos, mixed-use buildings, mobile home parks, mortgages, dormitories, and more. Next slide, please. WPEZ's current bulky waste policy work is rooted in our previous collaborative work with local governments on multifamily garbage and recycling issues. In 2017, Metro and local governments produced the multifamily recycling report. That was one of the 4 findings of that report was that bulky waste was inadequately addressed. At the time, some of you may recall a story about a gentleman cutting up a mattress with a knife and a pair of kitchen shears as directed by his property manager to dispose of it in the regular garbage. The findings and recommendations from that 2017 report informed actions in the 2030 Regional Waste Plan, including Action 10.5, provide regularly occurring bulky waste collection service with a particular emphasis on multifamily communities and lower income households. The 2030 Regional Waste Plan guided updates to Metro Code and Rule in late 2020 and early 2021 under sections called the Regional Service Standards. The Regional Service Standard is the policy tool that Metro uses to place minimum consistent elements on garbage and recycling collection services provided by local governments to residential and commercial customers. The substantive changes at this time established volume, frequency, color, and signage standards, and these were the first updates to multifamily recycling services since the opportunity to recycle was initially extended to people living in multifamily homes back in the late 1990s. Relevant for today's conversation is Multifamily Service Standard Administrative Rule 515-2040, subsection 4, that requires local governments to ensure the provision of regularly occurring bulky waste collection service by July 1, 2025. The related code and single-family rule require local governments to provide bulky waste collection service with no other specification. Next slide, please. I want to take a moment to describe the currently available bulky waste services in Greater Portland and bring attention to the differences in role and relationship. All 27 jurisdictions in Greater Portland currently do provide bulky waste collection service via their certificated, franchised, or licensed collection company for an additional fee at the request of the account holder. Account holders are usually single-family homeowners or property owners or managers. Most commonly, that additional fee is variable, comprised of time and labor to provide the service and disposal costs for the items collected. A few cities have established an itemized or categorized cost sheet or a flat fee system by bulky waste type rather than that variable fee. A handful of cities, via their collectors, provide additional bulky waste collection service to their residents. This can be in the form of an annual collection day for single-family homes or a drop-off day for residents and account holders at the private transfer stations. The owners of those private transfer stations also hold the collection franchises of the jurisdictions that have those drop-off days. One point I'd like to emphasize that's highlighted in the blue boxes there. Most often in single family, the account holder is also the person whose name is on the garbage bill and the user of the service. And there's a direct relationship with the collection company and the account holder to request, authorize, and pay for the collection service. For people living in multifamily homes, most commonly tenants or building residents are the users of the shared garbage and recycling service provided by the collection companies, and that's at the request of the account holder, most commonly the property manager. The access to services for tenants is most often dependent on the property manager, and that's the distinction that's highlighted there in the blue boxes. There are some collection companies that will coordinate additional fee bulky waste collection service directly with tenants, and there's some examples of collection companies and property managers making arrangements for regular bulky waste pickup as part of their garbage and recycling services at those properties. Also, regulatory language in some jurisdictions allows for tenants to directly access additional services from collection companies, and in some jurisdictions it does not. Next slide, please. In addition to working with Metro on the regional policy, some local governments have used state cleanup funding to provide multifamily bulky waste collection service. Beaverton, Hillsborough, and Wilsonville have adopted the itemized flat fee bulky waste collection sheet in an effort to more clearly communicate charges for services, and local governments are working to clarify their existing rules and regulations around tenant access to franchise services. Next slide. Guided by our policy framework, Metro and local governments agreed to again collaborate on bulky waste. The Bulky Waste Policy Project is looking at how collection service for bulky items can be more consistent, accessible, and convenient for all folks. The project is primarily focused on multifamily collection and is secondarily looking at single-family bulky waste collection from the point of collection, either curbside for single-family homes or on-site garbage and recycling service when considering multifamily homes. The project is not looking at beyond the curb services provided by junk hauling companies. The project, as you can see there, is broken out into 5 phases. The Metro and local government project team has used research and data at each phase to inform the next. We've completed phases 1 and 2, and phase 3 is currently underway. Looking forward, phase 4 is determining minimum consistent elements or service standards informed by the findings of the study, and phase 5 is implementation of those standards. Next slide, please. In phase 1, the project completed a landscape scan looking at services currently provided in the region and similar programs nationally, as well as engaged with tenants and collection companies for their perspectives. Major barriers identified included transportation, meaning having a vehicle at all or a vehicle appropriate to transport large items for self-haul to any collection point, transfer station, or neighborhood event. For tenants, the non-account holders I mentioned earlier, access to service is a barrier, and many could not access the services provided from their collection companies. Variability is also a key area in cost, services provided, and materials collected, and the issues created by variability are magnified by turnover of both residents and property managers. It's hard for folks to know what collection options they have available when the options are different within and between jurisdictions. Major opportunities identified included leading with service equity by prioritizing multifamily collection. Nationally, regularly occurring bulky waste collection service is rare for multifamily homes. The project team also saw an opportunity for regional minimum consistent elements to reduce the variability while still providing local jurisdictions flexibility in implementation. The project team also noted willing partners in collection companies. Some are already providing similar services, and collection companies have been actively involved in project engagement. Additionally, mattress stewardship program implementation should provide some reduction in disposal costs as well. Next slide. Based on the phase 1 findings, in phase 2, the project team developed 3 change scenarios and 1 status quo scenario. But that sounds kind of familiar for bulky waste collection service, and again engaged tenants, collection companies, and property managers. Pros and cons were found with all options, and it was notable that all parties recognized that the current status quo is not ideal, and all parties were conscious of the cost to implement future service change scenarios. Tenants noted that costs will always be passed on in some way, and said that costs will be an important deciding factor for them. Collection companies acknowledge that bulky waste is this multi-party issue, thinking back to those blue boxes, and it needs support from collection companies, property managers, and residents. Property managers believe the costs of a future bulky waste collection options would work out to be cheaper than the amount they currently feel they have to spend with private junk haulers. So as you've heard, cost is an important factor. Initially in phase 2, the project team sought to model the cost of the change scenarios, but as we dug into how data is tracked and reported for current bulky waste collection service, it became clear that that data would not be appropriate to use to estimate future costs. This pivoted the purpose of phase 3 from a more traditional test drive of service to a study designed with the purpose to provide a robust and reliable data set on material generation, service participation, and time to provide the service to be used to estimate potential costs, data that the project team needed to develop well-informed policy options. Though the, next slide, please. Though the focus of the project has been on services for people living in multifamily homes, Metro and local governments agreed to take a holistic look at multifamily and single-family services. The project team determined a pilot for single-family service would not be needed as there are multiple national and some local examples of this type of service, and data from these programs could be gathered for analysis and used to estimate cost impacts. Next slide. So getting into the pilot details. After reviewing demographic and multifamily building information, the city of Gresham was approached as a jurisdiction reflective of the region, and Gresham agreed to be the host jurisdiction of the study and to collaborate on the pilot study implementation. The 40 multifamily properties participating in the pilot are spread over 4 property size subgroups to ensure that the collection or that the sites participating reflect the mix of building sizes in Greater Portland. The weekly collection service allows for what's called a repeated measure study design that will produce statistically significant data on materials generated and time needed to produce this or provide the service. Another key piece of this study is education and outreach to residents. It is important when we're thinking about the generation of materials and participation that residents are aware of their opportunity to participate in the weekly service and know to place their materials out for collection. Next slide. This study would not be possible without the partners you see here. The city of Gresham has been actively involved as the host jurisdiction and led site recruitment. Collection companies, Gresham Sanitary and WM, provide the collection service and data points. Spanish-English bilingual staff from Trash for Peace are conducting 3 outreach pushes throughout the pilot, and we are partnering with Community Warehouse, our local nonprofit furniture bank, on an assessment of the opportunity to collect reusable materials out of the multifamily bulky waste stream. Next slide. The results of the data gathered on how much bulky waste is generated and time and motion to collect that material will be used to estimate the cost impacts of potential policy options. This is important because additional services will have impacts on local government rates and ratepayers, and I again want to highlight that future costs of service are a concern to all stakeholders. I also want to acknowledge that the current bulky waste system as it is has costs, and those are challenging to account for. Secondarily, the pilot will quantify the share of items that are reusable, the amount of mattresses collected, the average frequency that multifamily properties participate in this study by placing items out for any given week. Next slide. Prior to this work session, we presented at the Regional Waste Advisory Committee, and the committee strongly recommended property manager and tenant surveys be part of the study. The pilot is now in its 7th week and started on October 1st and runs through January 19th of 2024. Data collected during the pilot will be analyzed in winter, spring of 2024, and our plan is to engage with council on the pilot results and policy options with estimated impacts for consideration by fall of 2024. Next slide. And with that, we come to our questions for discussion.
Great, thank you. Counselors. Hold on, there. Any questions? Comments? Counselor Rosenthal and then Lewis and no one. And Wong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That brings up a whole bunch of smaller questions, I guess. First of all, what is the appropriate unit of measurement? Is it tonnage or volume for bulky waste? Are we collecting data on both? A side question would be, does RID Patrol characterize the amount of waste it collects in terms of bulky waste versus regular waste? And what is the percentage they're seeing? And then a third question would be, I guess, I'm not too skeptical, but is Gresham characteristic of all the other cities in the area? I mean, are the demographics of the sites we're taken, or we're looking at 40 sites there, are they consistent, or I should say, well representative of all the sites that we're seeing throughout, throughout the region?
I'll get started. You might have to remind me because I can't take any
Sure.
notes with my hand. Oh, you got the question. So tonnage, we're primarily measuring in weight, but you've hit on the central question of garbage and recycling, right? We provide the service in volume, but we do all of our measurements in weight. So we are working in weight because that is how we charge for materials when they hit a point of transfer. Also, collection companies use different equipment to provide collections, flatbed trucks, box trucks, rear loading, compacting trucks. So it's a key issue, and bulky waste is the most variable waste stream, right? Because a table may not weigh very much, but if it's standing on its legs, it takes up quite a bit of volume. But if you flip that the other way, then it doesn't take up that much volume at all, and you could work around it, which is one of the issues with having it in the multifamily waste stream, is that you've got larger yardage collection containers, most commonly at multifamily sites. And so if someone does put a table in that collection, that yardage dumpster, then it steals the volume there, and it creates a lack of capacity for the garbage. Let's see, the second question.
And I think the only thing I would add to that is, as you may know, we passed extended producer responsibility for mattresses. So we are also doing counts of mattresses to align it with the mattress EPR law to get better data on how many mattresses are at multifamily sites. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
So for sure, every week of the 16-week study, we're counting mattresses and box springs that would be covered under mattress EPR. And 4 times during the study, we are doing characterization interval measures that are focused on reusability, but also characterizing every piece of bulky waste set out for collection according to community warehouses, categories for reusability and characterization.
Okay.
And the last, RID Patrol does characterize their bulky waste, and last I checked in with them about a year ago, about 40% of what RID Patrol collects is bulky materials or would be considered bulky waste. And when we looked at the city of Gresham, we saw that the multifamily density was representative of the regional average. And we also made sure that we were looking at the different property size subgroups, because Washington County and areas of Clackamas County have fewer larger unit sites, so the 300, 400, 500 unit sites. So we made sure that a few of those in Gresham were included. The city of Portland tends to have more sites that are fewer unit sites. So we made sure that we had a distribution of different, those are the unit subgroups.
Thank you.
Great. Councilor Lewis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today with this overview. It's kind of like Christmas for me because when you talk about bulky waste, I get really excited. So you are my Santa Claus. Thank you.
You can say bulky waste collection service over and over and over.
So I guess I'll start by saying I'm excited by the work plan and seeing us in the middle of it. 25 still seems really far away. So I will be the cheerleader for seeing if we can accelerate through next year. I know you want to come back middle of next year. Early middle of next year would be great. But I guess my question to start with comes from, I understand the typology of the 40 sites that you picked in Gresham, but in terms of franchise agreements, is there something unique about Gresham that the rest of the region is gonna need in order to allow these services to operate at multifamily?
I don't think that there's, so you probably heard me say certificated, licensed, and franchise collection services, right? And those are three different mechanisms that cities and counties use to contract or have agreements with their collectors. Gresham uses a franchise, that's probably the most common. The city of Portland, multifamily is part of the commercial garbage and recycling system, and their commercial garbage and recycling system is open market. So the city of Portland's actually the outlier there. I feel like I'm getting lost in my response.
Let's come back to what makes Gresham and their franchise
Oh.
agreements easier to do this in than maybe someplace in Washington or Clackamas counties.
It wasn't so much their franchise agreements per se. Gresham has 4 franchised haulers, so we were able to do the study and split the sample group in 2 different haulers to see how it would work with 2 different hauling operations. Some cities have just a single hauler franchise. Every hauler does their operation just a little bit differently and how they staff and the equipment that they use. So Gresham's demographics were a good match as being representative of the region, both on socioeconomic and equity-focused areas and multifamily housing stock. But yes, having multiple franchise holders in Gresham allowed us to work with more than one collection company, which was, I think, ideal for us to just have more representation in our samples.
And I would just add that this pilot is really focused on the franchise collection system. So meaning the companies that have franchise agreements with local governments. Junk haulers and the way that they are incorporated in that system differs by jurisdiction. And so, for example, in Washington County, a junk hauler that only hauls waste would be considered in violation of the franchise. If they have additional services like move in, move out, like where they're carrying items or cleaning garbage areas, then that's outside the franchise or considered in addition to. So the laws are, and the franchise laws are inconsistent across jurisdictions, and they treat those or approach those junk haulers in their franchise areas differently.
Thank you. You saw the question I was
Yeah.
trying to ask. And I don't want that to get lost. I think
Yes.
it's really valuable for us to set a standard that is around pickup of bulky waste outside.
Yes.
But I think that there's a special layer of making available the junk haul removal.
Yes.
Across the region with the door-to-door service in a way that doesn't currently exist.
Absolutely. And in Gresham, with the state funds, they have done, they've used those funds to do events with multifamily where they do use junk haulers for those events. And they play a critical role in those services that are in addition to the franchise system.
Yeah, so I guess when we come back, I would like to see a recommendation that layers any policy revision for code with those door-to-door services on top of what is gonna be required under the base study. Or
Great.
the base level of service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you
for
for
that
seeing the question I was trying to
Yeah,
get to.
I appreciate your feedback.
Councilor Nolan, then more.
Thanks, Madam President. I noticed on your pilot program that you're doing weekly collection of bulky waste. I'm curious whether that is in the frequency level you anticipate moving forward with. It kind of surprises me, actually, that frequent a service is what's called for, as opposed to, say, either monthly service or even scheduled days, because I'm thinking of upsizing this to the whole region. That's a cost that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, the weekly collection service is very likely to not be what is called for. That is a frequency that we arrived at to get us the data on generation and time in motion, because something that we would be potentially coming out of the study with is like a per unit generation number. Like, let's just say that every unit generates 10 pounds of bulky waste per unit per week. And then we could use that number to look at the number of units in a given area and then estimate the amount of truck time you would need, the amount of capacity and service volume that you would need to plan for at a given interval, whether that be monthly or quarterly. If we went with a less frequent interval, we would need a much longer pilot period, and that is not the vibe I was hearing, that we would want to take a year to do a pilot.
The practicalities impose some limits, but if I put out a 100-pound item once a year, that doesn't mean I put out 2 pounds a week.
For sure. And so those,
And planning around the 2 pounds will not put us in a position to handle the 100-pound item that I put out once a year or once every other year. So I'm glad you're paying attention to it, but it raises questions about the applicability of the results unless we correct for them.
Yeah, it's garbage is really hard to evaluate and measure and track because it comes in floods. And so doing it at a weekly pace enables us to look at it closely and see if there's floods or how it fluctuates. Also, the benefit of this pilot is that there was no financial information. We looked to other jurisdictions. So this really is giving us a baseline for financial analysis to be able to have a window into what multifamily regularly occurring bulky waste services could cost. And so, it's just really hard. Seasonality impacts it and everything else,
One more question, if I might, Madam President. I'm interested in what the information we cull from the pilot project will give us by ways of how we participate in or regulate or collaborate with other regulators on manufacturer responsibility or upstream management. Ideally, the best approach is to not throw anything out because it all is recyclable, reusable, something else. And I'm hoping that we can get something out of this project that tells us about behavior and what incentives, for example, might work in sending those mattresses back to the manufacturer, sending other bulky items, water heaters back, to a scrap metal dealer. Are there any plans in your project pilot that would help inform those options?
for extended producer responsibility, we are tracking the mattresses and box springs, those covered products. As EPR programs currently work, the materials have to come to a collection point, or commonly called a depot. So we're looking to see what percentage of the multifamily bulky waste materials generated are mattresses in these covered materials, so that we can collect them in a way that they get recycled at the
Covered
depot.
materials including upholstered furniture?
It's covered materials in the EPR program would be mattresses and box springs with some
Covered by the program,
covered
not
by the
covered in
program.
fabric.
Yes,
Got it.
we're also doing that characterization work, because upholstered items are an item of concern for us as well. Additionally, e-cycles materials, we're tracking how many bulky e-cycles materials are generated each week as well, so that they can go to a point of collection instead of in the disposal stream. The characterization data will help us better understand what we should be going after. If we see a lot of tires that we're collecting through this, then tire EPR might be a thing. We said appliances with refrigerants, little air conditioning units or refrigerators, that's another opportunity as well. So we'll use the characterization data for that.
And are you correcting for the potential or likelihood of this creates an opportunity to clear out all the stuff that's in the back of the garage or in the the crawl space under the house, because people haven't had a place to throw those tires or to throw other stuff. But now they can get rid of it, 10 years worth of accumulation.
Right, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another benefit of the weekly study design, is that we have close tracking of demand management, right? And one of the things that we all think is that the multifamily bulky waste stream is influenced by the monthly move-in, move-out. Is it better at the last week or better at the first week? Well, we'll get 4 of each of those. So we can see the trend line of, like, in the middle of the month, there's not so much stuff. On the first week, there's actually a lot of stuff, or the last, or maybe that'll flip on its head. So the weekly service, it also allows for not too many materials to accumulate at any one time, because that was a key concern of every property manager and a key recruitment issue of property managers to participate. They didn't want materials accumulating because theft of service. Folks dumping at bulky waste or at multifamily sites is also a big issue that would continue to be an issue in the rollout of any service. There's one more thing I was going to say there. Oh, collection companies as well. They need to be able to accommodate providing the service in their regular operations, particularly for the pilot. And so if we did a less frequent pickup interval, you could have a giant pile that would invite more theft of service and then potentially block access to the garbage and recycling bins. We had to really work with property managers and haulers to find those specific areas to collect the materials.
The one other thing that I would add related, in addition to producer responsibility with the waste characterization data, is that it will also provide us information on the opportunity for reuse. Having that reuse assessment as a part of this will give us a better sense of how much of that material being disposed still has life to be reused or repurposed or repaired, and other aspects that can help with waste reduction.
Thanks. Thanks, Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and I just want to thank the staff for spending so much time with us. I feel like I'm in grad school again, and, working my way to a master's degree maybe, if I'm lucky, but thanks for all your patience and helping us work through all this. I have one quick question and then kind of a longer question. Just quickly, you said there was like local examples already for single family. And I was wondering what's the best local example?
Well, they're all a little bit different, which is kind of a theme I hope you're picking up on. Troutdale provides one time a year, they split the city in half. Actually, they do the same thing in Milwaukee, splitting the city in half. So half the city at single-family homes gets pickup at one weekend in May. The other half of the city gets the pickup a different weekend in May. Milwaukee does the same thing, except for in June. West Lynn has what they call a personal collection day. So not a set pickup day, but that every single family or account holder person could request a set volume, right? I forget exactly off the top of my head.
10 cubic yards.
And maybe like 3 appliances and 2 tires and a pile this big that can be composed of this amount of thing. But that's on call. So each account holder can call and say, I'd like mine to be this day. So it could coincide with that garage clean out or what have you. Durham does an annual collection day for their whole jurisdiction. And then I think it is Lake Oswego, Tualatin, and Forest Grove work with their franchise holders to have self-haul days to those transfer stations. It's hard to say which is best. The set day, so it happens on May 17th, tends to have a higher participation rate, meaning more people set out, more households set out materials, but the piles are smaller. The on-call, on-demand day, you have fewer households participating, but the piles are bigger. And this has been sort of a fun thing to get into, to figure out.
Great, thank you. And my next question, I was really kind of intrigued with the partnerships in the pilot in Gresham. And, I think we're really exploring what it means to build public-private partnerships. So generally a fan. But I'm wondering if you could give us some more details on that partnership and frankly, how are decisions being made between the city, Gresham Sanitary, Trash for Peace, and Community Warehouse? Are we compensating the nonprofit partners? Are they meeting together to make shared decisions and work planning? And then for Community Warehouse, do they have a warehouse in Gresham? Is this an opportunity to make a recycle alley type kind of concept along with that pilot? So just a little bit more on what that partnership looks like and how we're making sure all the voices are at the decision-making table.
Yes, there are many meetings, and particularly, Gresham and the collection companies in Metro, and then there is Gresham, Trash for Peace, and Metro. The work that Trash for Peace is doing within this pilot is very much an extension of the work that they do regularly with the city of Gresham. They provide a lot of outreach and education services on behalf of the city of Gresham, so this has been a really good extension of that. The approach and how each site is reached out to has been a collaborative process with Trash for Peace, but I would say that's probably not so much like a ground up. The work with Community Warehouse has been between Community Warehouse and Metro, and that very much has been co-led, co-designed, collaborative with Community Warehouse. When we were assessing what is reusable, that's an open question, and there's lots of different understandings of what is reusable. So we wanted to partner with our local experts to say, what do you consider reuse to be? That way we can say every item that we've identified as reusable would be accepted for reuse by Community Warehouse and sent to people who can use the furniture. And I just want to be clear, we are not actually collecting anything for reuse through the pilot because we need to weigh it so that we understand how many materials are generated. But this gives us a lot of insights into piece by piece. What are the materials? Are they in good enough condition to be donated? Are they materials that Community Warehouse would accept? And so we're categorizing and keying all the materials that way.
And I'll just add that, yes, all the nonprofit partners are being compensated through contracts, and the training that Community Warehouse has been providing around what is reusable actually has been with our RID staff, somebody from the RID program. So that has been a great synergy to connect what is reuse with our RID program so they can think about that. And then the last thing I'll add is that I did visit the new location in the city of Gresham with Councilor Simpson and the solid waste director from city of Gresham. And this pilot is bringing together great synergies and partnerships around reuse and bulky waste. It was a great visit at that location that, as you know, is funded through our I&I grant program. And so just the folks coming around this, you can see the synergies coming around this pilot and the conversations happening. And so that is making it really exciting.
So we won't know what Community Warehouse could take in the pilot, but we're kind of planning for that in the future.
We're applying their standards for what is reusable to the evaluation of the characterization study of what is reusable that's collected through this pilot. As you can imagine, a lot of the material, it's winter, it gets rained on. There's different opportunities, like in the summer, to probably collect more reusable material than in the winter. So it is a little challenging having a winter pilot because there's probably more reuse opportunity in the summer. So those are just the things that the team's working through and thinking about.
I would also add, Sarah mentioned this briefly when she went through the presentation, that as a part of the regional refresh program, there were some smaller pilots done in Gresham that were partnerships with Trash for Peace and Community Warehouse and Junket, where they did do a whole closed loop system of collecting materials, assessing them, and then redistributing them to people that were going into housing and in need of furniture. And so we do have some, data from those experiences that demonstrate that there is opportunity to collect and redistribute.
And when our nonprofit partners came last week to talk about, requesting additional support, this is like kind of on a pathway to that. Is it, okay. Thank you very much.
And there is crossover with housing and the folks moving into housing that need furniture to make their house a home. The demand in Gresham is very high for materials for bulky waste and housing items. They actually have people go from Gresham to their Tualatin warehouse to seek furniture because the appointments are so, there's so few appointments available in the Gresham area.
Well, I really appreciate the partnerships being built, both internally and
Yeah.
externally.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Cool. Coming around again, Counselor Lewis and then Counselor Rosenthal.
Sure, thanks so much. I guess in thinking through how we close the pilot and transition into our future state, what kind of data will be taken through a collection of surveys or charrettes of residents and their experience? Sounds like you have your haulers and your property managers in the loop. But I think it's important that we get the residents' experience and then also that we explain very clearly to residents why they're gonna go from this really awesome once-a-week service to something that's probably gonna be less. And it's not the government taking something away that everybody had, but instead that they were part of a really cool experiment and they helped us generate some data that's making things and service better for everybody.
We have absolutely been messaging the pilot that way, right? This is a one-time, we're collecting some data. The surveys that we're doing with property managers and residents, we're currently developing them right now. It is much less like a satisfaction survey, did you like once a week pickup, and much more around how often did you use the service? What kind of materials would you put out? How often would you be likely to use this in the future? But we're currently developing those questions, and if you've got more that you'd like us to include, we're glad to.
I think a question about kind of a casual reuse loop might be good as well.
Okay.
You know, when I moved out of my apartment, it was like 30 minutes before all the stuff I put out by the dumpster was reclaimed by somebody. I don't know why they wanted that nasty old mattress, but they did. So I think casual reuse is probably an effect that we haven't been able to track, and it would be interesting to find out as well.
Great, Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a sort of, it's somewhat trivial maybe, and because Gresham is so close to the flat pack mecca of the world, can we assume that all flat pack furniture is not bulky waste? Or that the great majority of flat pack furniture, we know the flat pack mecca, of course.
I would say that most flat pack furniture is the mostly non-reusable kind of bulky waste because it doesn't disassemble and reassemble well. So when folks need to move quickly, they are just be likely to just leave it if they're not taking it with them. And it also is not particularly durable, right? You're probably not taking apart your Allen wrench flat pack press board bookcase
So it ends up,
very effectively.
a lot of it ends up in bulky waste.
Yes.
Okay.
Which would again be one of those potential EPR. EPR for all furniture is a thought that some folks have in discussion.
Okay.
And I just want to add, as far as I know, there is not a comprehensive furniture EPR law in the United States. We have bulky waste, we have some states with carpet. I'm not sure if a furniture EPR law exists in Europe or Canada, but I know it doesn't exist here.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Much appreciated. I have nothing further to add on this, except to ask Marta to round us up with next steps.
Yeah, so we appreciate the opportunity to engage with you today. As bulky waste has come up as a topic in the system facilities plan, we wanted to build understanding around what is being done at the collection service standards level. The pilot is going to conclude in January, as Sarah mentioned, and we'll be doing that data analysis and coming back to council early in
Yeah, we could come back with pilot results and initial findings probably spring.
We heard the
Yeah.
desire to push this forward more quickly, so
Yeah,
we
we
will
might
do our
not have
best.
all the policy options, but we could say like, here's what we found in the pilot and here's our initial early results.
That sounds great.
Great,
Right.
Thank you.
thank you. Looking forward to that.
Appreciate the time.
All right, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communication.
Thank you and good morning, President Peterson and counselors. Two updates for you today. As you may have seen in your email, we are asking the community for feedback on the design of a memorial at Lone Fir Cemetery, memorializing the historic Chinese section of the cemetery. That survey is open until November 28th. It's not the only outreach that we've done. We've done a lot with stakeholder groups, but this is a survey that's open to the entire public. And folks can find that at oregonmetro.gov/Lone Fir Garden. Again, oregonmetro.gov/Lone Fir Garden. And this is probably the funnest update, switching topics now, that I may have ever given, and that is that there is big baby news, as in big news about big babies at the Oregon Zoo. The Oregon Zoo is expecting the arrival of 2 extra-large babies in the next weeks and months. Our eastern black rhino Josie is expected to give birth between now and January. It's very exciting. And our Asian elephant, Rose 2, is also pregnant, and the gestation for her is quite long. We think she may have gotten pregnant this May, and she won't give birth until early 2025. So still a long way to go. It's risky. So we are monitoring things carefully, but we have a great team over there that's making sure everybody's healthy. And so, yeah, we'll have some fresh, new baby energy at the zoo.
Awesome, thank you. It is good news. Only thing I would say is let's make sure that those inherent risks are well-known over the next couple of months and years, because we have had,
Absolutely.
we've had some hard losses, but nothing that was on the zookeepers. It's just part of the genetics and the heritage and
life.
and life, just life.
Yep.
So I think just having a good understanding as we go through the next year of what the risks are, not that that's the happy part, but I think letting our folks know in the region, this is exciting news, but there's a lot that we need to get through.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. For both mom and baby. All right, counselors, any communications for the good of the order? Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you. First, a question for Marissa was, do you know when we can talk about the other additions to the zoo that were announced in that memo, and how long that is?
Both of
There's
them.
2 babies, there's 2 sets of young animals, some of them from the far east and some of them from the far north.
I'm not sure about those other babies yet, I think.
Obviously not yet.
Obviously not yet. Okay.
Except we just,
Let's just be clear.
to that vast radio audience.
Getting ahead of mamas.
The announcement I want to make is I was fortunate on last Thursday, which is why I wasn't at council, to attend the grand opening of a Tigard Senior Center, which it's interesting. It's a nice location. It's right close to the library. It's close to transportation. It's on the Fano Creek Trail. The interesting thing about that, the groundbreaking was just barely over a year ago. It was in July of last year, which I could not attend because I had COVID at the time. But it was quite a festive affair. It's 57 units. It's really quite nicely done. Again, we use our standard partners, and so it's just another success that we can be very proud of.
Awesome, thank you. Counselor Nolan.
Small point of personal privilege to advise the council that there is another Counselor Nolan out there in the universe, bragging on my kid's sister, who just last week was reelected as counselor to the Cambridge City Council.
Oh, fun. That's great. Yes. Congratulations.
Using the same ranked choice voting system that those of us who live in Portland will use next November to elect our city council.
Wow.
Fun.
They've had it for a while, haven't they?
Oh, it's an academic town, so yes, they've used it for 50, 60 years.
It works.
Again, not breaking new
Well, it
ground
works
here.
because Patricia won.
Good point. Counselors, any other communications? All right, with that, we are adjourned, and our next regular meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 16th at 10:30 a.m. See you all there. Thanks.
Recording stopped.